There was a day in March of 2011 when the air looked different to Ted Shady.
We hadn't had wind and we hadn't had any local fires, but there was a dust in the air here that really filled the valley from top to bottom, 10,000 feet deep.
After a few days, the air cleared. But then again this past March, the strange dust returned. And having spent the past 23 years studying the air quality of this valley in the Sierra Mountains, Shady knew something had changed.
And then this March, once again, it was kind of the same thing. It was a lighter color, whiter dust than we normally see. So we did a little bit of research, and there was, about a week earlier, a large dust storm in the Gobi Desert that plagued Beijing.
What Shady had seen, and now tracked, was an incredibly complicated version of 21st century migration, the transcontinental transport of Asian-born aerosols.
What we're getting from Asia are really two different kinds of air pollution. We're getting particles that are larger, that are dust. Now, the other thing are combustion processes, whether it's coal or other kinds of fuels. Those also make small particles, and so they can travel a long way.
So the stuff we get, unfortunately, is respirable. Okay? And then on this dust are small amounts, but detectable amounts of soot, of metals, of zinc, things like that, associated with industry, especially the industry in North China.
The vast majority of Asian particles are scrubbed from the air well before they reach the Californian shore by the Pacific Ocean. But when conditions are correct, the air is projected into what is known as the lower free troposphere, and the air and particles essentially catch a ride on the jet stream, sometimes arriving in California within as little as 4 days.
John Christensen, an isotope geochemist from the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, is part of a collaboration of California researchers looking into this long-range transport. His task is to not only understand the nuances of the transport, but to distinguish between local Californian contributions and externally sourced aerosols.
Here we're sort of ground truthing it, getting an actual handle on that physical aerosol and characterizing it both in terms of its isotopic composition, which helps us figure out where it came from, but also in its chemical composition.
The aerosols present a troubling element to the already contentious local and federal air quality standard debates. A recent report presented to the California Air Resource Board found that during a March week in 2008, as much as 45% of a California collection site's PM2.5, the small breathable aerosol, had originated in Asia.
The actual pollutants, say the PM2.5, or the amount of lead that we're seeing here in California, those are well below regulatory issues. The real issue is what those aerosols would be doing to our climate. And that's where the rubber meets the road in terms of the effects that one should be concerned about.
It is of enough concern that climate change and energy consumption played a less than subtle co-starring role in California Governor Jerry Brown's recent trade mission to Beijing. While singing the virtues of continued investment between China and California, he simultaneously expressed the need for increased attention on the environment.
The bottom line is we live in a small world and we breathe each other's pollution. I think the fact of the matter is that, what we're getting is a small echo of what they're breathing themselves. And so we're not bashing China, we're just pointing out that China has terrible problems that are not resolved internally, and some of those problems have been spilling over to the world as a whole. And my feeling is every time I buy something from China, I realize somebody down in China is paying for it in terms of bad air quality.
Well, we sort of export our manufacturing and export our pollution, but then they export some of it back. The goods and the air pollution, but also when you talk about climate change, it's also the carbon dioxide. So, you know, we don't emit the carbon dioxide here. We can say, oh, we're so good, we don't emit carbon dioxide here. But then we manufacture somewhere else where they're using, you know, a very dirty form of energy with much more CO2 emission per energy produced. We're just fooling ourselves.
For California, and really for the entire world, Asian-sourced aerosols, while bearing the stripes of Chinese industry, also wears the marks of the West, offering a complicated measurement of a world where pollution is no longer local and responsibility is no longer singular. Christopher Booker, Financial Times, San Francisco, California.